I think I've learned that at this point where I talk to certain people because I like your work, but I want to get to know you as a person.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
once I was like, okay, I like you as a person. I just want to be your friend now.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's
Yeah.
cool. Honestly, like, and I mean, we've collaborated in a sense, you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
doing collaborations with people is like, it's always fun to like really meet them and talk to them. And I always get so excited whenever I meet people that have been in like an Apollo book in person or have interviewed
Yeah.
in person because it's like a weird relationship. It's like you're not just friends, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're not just like acquaintances, you're not just like online buddies you've known and like,
Hmm.
sent messages for. It's like, dude, we're in a book together. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different type of excitement that comes out of it.
That's that's something I've learned because like kind of started doing comics like right before the pandemic,
Hmm.
and then the pandemic happened, and then I was like, can't really meet that many people. And then after Apollo came out,
Hmm.
or yeah, that was just awesome. Running into people at Baltimore Comic Con, they're like, "Hey, we worked on the same book together." I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And then that small connection, and then we just start talking about that book and more stuff. It just blossoms, and I love that. It's
And
just a
that's why I
cool
think
connection.
like the anthologies are just so much fun for that. Like I
Yeah,
didn't realize the community I was growing when I was making the books. It was very much of me just like scrambling, trying to put a book together, my first book, and like figuring
yeah,
it out and just like hoping everyone's happy and just like getting it down. And then at the end of it all, I just realized that we made a bunch of friends. A
yeah.
lot of people like got to collaborate and come out of projects outside of that. A lot of people got to hear about each other, and a lot of
Hmm.
people like Max Flowers, it was their first time being published. So it was like,
Yeah,
that trips me out because I'm like, how is someone like you like not in 12 books by the time you got to me? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it just trips me out. But yeah, you were
It's
saying
a
right before COVID you started. I was looking at when the first was the book Sidekick for Hire got
yeah.
put out. It was like 2019, right?
Yeah, it was right at the end of 2019. I officially got the prints of it like the day before Halloween on 2019. I was
Oh,
like, oh,
wow.
that was the first time I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to have my own comic, like of my own printed like that. Cause I've done like small things here and there, but it wasn't like there wasn't anything that actually made me feel like, oh, I'm a comic book creator. And that was the
Hmm.
first time I did that. And it was awesome. And I sold a few. I sold them at like comic book stores, and I was really proud with what Rick Alves and I did with the cover.
Yeah.
And it was because it pops. It's something that people look at, and you get the whole story idea from it. And if I can make people look at it and just chuckle, because on the front it just says "We'll save the day for money,"
Hmm.
that people remember that. And so I was really happy with how it all went. And I was like, you know what, 2020 is going to be my year. I was signed up for conventions, and I had my second Kickstarter, or my first Kickstarter, but my second book starting at the beginning of March. I was like, okay,
Oh,
cool, I'm ready. And then the pandemic happened, which is like everyone's story. And I was like, oh, well, I'm already at the bottom. So it's not like I can restart. So it's cool.
yeah, at least you already have like a bump up against a lot of other people, and I mean, it kind of. I feel maybe did that help you finish writing your series and put out the rest of the book? Because 5 issues is pretty, or 6 issues. I
It
could
was
be wrong.
five
Five.
issues. I
Okay,
did
yeah,
5 issues, and then I did a one shot that was something else separate because I
mm,
just wanted to keep making stories.
nice. Okay, and then there's a prologue in there too. I think I remember seeing.
Are you talking about my one shot prologue, or are
Oh,
you
that's
talking
what it
about?
is. Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I remember because I remember I backed that Kickstarter and I had a cool little bundle of all
Hmm.
5 issues and then that prologue book.
Yeah.
That's so rad though. That's so much work and just like kind of a short amount of time. And when I
Yeah.
think about like what was going on, especially in issue one, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but like
Oh,
your
go ahead.
storytelling. Okay, well, we'll talk about it. I'm super happy because in a craft perspective, very
Mhm.
well executed, dude. You like introduce this
Thank you.
character and a situation, and then you leave it like where the one guy gets shot, and then it cuts to
Hmm.
the next day, and then
Yeah.
you kind of live through this kid's life and how he's functioning. Very, talked about. I think you talked about Ultimate Spider-Man at the end of that book,
Yeah.
and how that like really like just connected with you. And once I read that after reading, you go through that kid's life and then you find out what actually happened at the end of that moment,
Hmm.
that end of that first, that, well, not the first night, but that one night that we pick up on. And
Yeah.
dude, it's such a good cliffhanger, like such a good way of just like cooking us, explaining the
Hmm.
world and the environment, and then drawing us back into some really intense drama. And then just like, whoa, I was so excited to dive into the next issues because damn, dude, that was just very well for a very first issue. And to say it's your
Thank you.
first full comic,
Yeah. I
awesome.
really appreciate it. It was so when I originally like I came up with the idea back in college because I was obviously talking with friends about like what if people are really superheroes? And it's like, well, it'd be dumb because you die and get hurt. But then like the idea of like us being a sidekick because we get hired. So it kind of like grew from that. But like the first draft of the comic, what was so cool about it is it was just gonna be the cliffhanger was the hero dies at the end of the first issue.
Oh,
And
okay.
like the more I like read it, I was like, it's so obvious. There's like I want to do a little bit more showing like the main character, but I don't like that being the cliffhanger as much. And so I decided to shorten up that scene significantly,
Hmm.
which thank God I did. Because obviously everyone's first comment, they're like, oh, it's going to be my 50 issue magnum opus.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's going to be 60 pages for the first issue. I was like, I wanted it to keep it short. I think it's 22 pages full story and 24
Hmm.
pages in total. Because I looked at all the other like Marvel and DC comics and they're all 22 pages.
Hmm.
So I was like, I want to keep it similar like that. I want to prove that I can do that. And as I had other people kind of check it out and read it, I was like, you know what? It needs to be like the fake like cliffhanger where it's like the hero dies. So like, oh man, that must be the end of the issue. And then there's so much more of the story left.
Yeah.
And then the second one where it turns out Leo killed somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like that was a big one. I was like, that's the thing that people need to realize, like, oh, this is more realistic kind of thing. And he's
Hmm.
just dealing with that. So it was fun. There's definitely thing going looking back. I think everyone does this where like I would change like a few things in there and update it, but I think that
Always.
comes with the territory of
Yeah.
like once you get better at comics, you're like, well, I could have done this, I could have done that. But overall, I'm really proud of it. Like that's something I
Well,
still show to people.
as a first issue, it's what you need to do to hook someone to connect you to the next part of the series, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, a lot of people forget that is that your first issue is really got to convince them as an indie creator. Like, you got to knock it
Hmm.
out of the park so you can start building that fan base. So people are like thirsty and curious on what happens next. Like, I was
Yeah.
thirsty and curious after reading that first issue of being like, man,
Thank you.
I'm glad I got the 5 issue bundle because I could just die.
Yeah.
It feels like the complete story here. And then, you know, going to like your newest book, we call them myths, I believe.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yep.
And so that was such a fun. I mean, your artist that worked with you on that too. Was that
Colton.
Colton? Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, such a Mike Mangola like vibe and feel to that too. Like
Yeah.
super fun.
He honestly he will say this himself. His biggest inspirations are Mike Manola and then God, I keep drawing Andrew. I forget his last name, but he did Headlopper. And
Oh, I know who you're talking. I know Headlopper. I don't remember his name
yeah,
though. Yeah. Oh, that makes
I,
sense, man.
I
I
have
haven't
his
heard
book
someone
somewhere
name
behind me.
drop Headlopper in a minute. Like I
Yeah,
have a whole bunch of those issues.
that's his. Those are like his favorite artists. He's like, those are artists that like, okay, I don't have to do the whole normal superhero style. I want to do my style. I want to have more fun with it, and it just worked. That was I love Sidekick for Hire, but since that was like my first comic, it was very much talking with the artists and the colors. I'm like, hey, here's the idea I have, and they're like, cool, sounds good. And I was like, no, kind of give me more feedback. Like, what do you think? Do you think that works? And then we grew that relationship.
Hmm.
With Colton, on the other hand, he and I we started just pitching ideas at each other, and then we kept bouncing it back. Like originally, it was supposed to be a story about a monster hunter. And I was like, I don't
Mm.
want to do them hunting monsters. I feel like that's so overdone, and I don't know. I want to do something cool with the monsters. So like, what if we do a Men in Black style where they're supposed to be helping them for the most part? He's like, ooh, I like that. That's a cool idea. And then it became a buddy cop story. And then he says, like, can one of them be a robot? And it makes sense in the world. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do that. And it just kept going back and forth. And it just became so much fun.
It is fun.
And
And that's the
oh,
cool part behind it. Dude, talk about that like crocodile chase scene. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like one of the coolest pages I've seen in a comic in such a long time. It was such
In
a
the
pleasure
sewer
just to go
scene.
through that. Yes, it's so cool. It's so Scooby Doo like, you know?
Well, that was the thing. I wrote the like I wanted to start in the sewers part of the story, which was really cool. And then Colt was like, "Hey, I have this idea for a page. I don't know if we can make it fit." And he just sent me the roughest draft of it, and I was like, "Yeah, we can make it fit. Absolutely. Let's find a spot for it." And it worked seamlessly for it. And it was just
Oh
something that
yeah.
was so important that we had to put this. Everything that we do has a purpose in this comic, and it's just it's fun. That's the thing. We just want to have fun with it.
Comics with